Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live, coming at you 5 days a week. Wow, we're going to be finishing up week 12, getting into week 13. Things are rolling along. Hope everybody enjoyed the Thanksgiving weekend. Back on our normal schedule now. So let's start out. The big story of the day. Kyren Williams gets activated off of injured reserve and puts up a week winner. 204 scrimmage yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, 22 touches. Wow. If anybody saw that coming preseason, you're a genius, because obviously he was buried behind Cam Akers last year at the end of the season. Not great. Things have clicked perfectly. And it was interesting because in this game, you always wonder when the player's coming back from injury, is the team going to limit him coming back? Is he going to be a little limited coming back? Sometimes people see players off these high ankle sprains come back and they're not quite what they were. Not the case. So hopefully you started Kyren Williams. I told people, just if you have a concern that they might not use him in full, I get it. But otherwise, start him as you normally would. And I think going forward, I really don't know how you put him as less than a top 5 or 6 running back. I believe it's 5 of 7 games or 4 of 7. I think it's 5 of 7 games. He's played at least 24 PPR points. Yeah, he had a couple smaller games in there, but I mean, realistically, when you're putting up that kind of production, especially this year, we're not getting big games out of players frequently at all. So, I mean, obviously McCaffrey's there, but he's outscoring Austin Eckler, right? Travis Etienne. So, I mean, he's outscoring all these guys. I mean, who's left, right? So you got to put Kyren Williams. I mean, the role is there. The offense is humming. And then interesting, Matthew Stafford, 229 through the air. Again, not great. Throws 4 touchdowns. Now you would think, right, 4 touchdowns from Stafford. Kupp and Nakua did nothing. Kupp, 3 for 18. Morning, Charlene. Welcome back. Nakua, 4 for 27. So they combined for 45 yards and 7 catches. And Higbee gets the 2 touchdowns. And Kyren Williams gets the other 2. So I don't think that is something we foresaw. And when people are asking sit questions about the Rams, it was getting to the point where it's really hard to start both of the receivers because they're both not going off. And like last week, Nakua didn't see a target till like halftime. He ended up fine because Kupp went out of that game with an ankle sprain. But realistically, Kupp had 3 games sub 10 PPR points in his last 5. So that offense was already kind of changing a bit. But again, now neither of them did a thing. And now I know the matchup was super favorable. Arizona, they can't stop really anything and certainly get your running game going. But the way they've been using Williams and he's been productive, this probably does put a bit of a bite on the receivers, continues to. So it's going to be interesting down the stretch. But man, Cooper Kupp, we waited for him to come back from injury. And now, wow, not so much. So how do you rank Cooper Kupp as a wide receiver 1 right now? I don't even know. I mean, will he have wide receiver 1 weeks the rest of the way? Sure, he might. But realistically, I don't know that it's happening. So again, just it's every season's a weird fantasy season. There's no question about that. But the number of players that have just like fallen off from production for reasons outside of their own talent. This is the one I don't remember. I have a number of fantasy teams where I have these outstanding NFL players like Amari Cooper, Chris Godwin. The list is on and on. You have the same players, and they're not James Conner. They're not producing for fantasy, but they're still excellent NFL players. So that's the weirdest thing I've seen. I've never had a season where very good players don't produce double-digit fantasy points with some regularity. So, but the Rams, again, very interesting. The Rams continue to play good football. They could squeak into the playoffs. We'll see what happens with that. But Arizona looked lost in that game, but no need to spend much time on them. All right, so next we'll talk about Jaguars, Texans. Now that was a fun game. And going into that game, I the one thing I had wondered, this was the first time that Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator, and CJ Stroud and the receivers, they were going to have a rematch against the team. So now not just studying film on a team, but having been burned by the Texans, what would happen in the rematch? Well, CJ Stroud did just fine. 304 yards, couple touchdowns through the air. He runs for 47 in another. So CJ Stroud continues to smash. But from an NFL standpoint, they held the Texans to 21 points, which with the way that offense has been rolling, it was a good showing by the Jaguars defense. And obviously the Texans were trailing. And so they had to play in chase mode a bit. And so, but they've been doing that in a lot of weeks. But again, this isn't about the fantasy production, but I think that the Texans passed this test with flying colors. I have to say this is a big pass for them because the Jacksonville is a good defense. They're not great. They're good. And the fact that in the rematch, Stroud is still able to burn up for 300 yards, that was outstanding. Now, the running game didn't get going here. Now, the snaps between Singletary and Pierce were night and day, 82% to 18. But in terms of carries, Singletary had 6 and Pierce had 5. They both were less than 3 yards or less per carry. That was it. Now, in the receiving game, Singletary had a big catch, goes 6 for 54 through the air. So he had 11 receiving points PPR, whereas Pierce had 1. So, but the snap share, not close. So at this point, it kind of as we assumed, Singletary did enough to distance himself from Pierce, who was having a very, very bad season. And 3 yards per carry for Pierce on the season just hasn't looked good. Maybe not a fit for this offense. That's possible. But maybe he just had a big rookie season until he got hurt, and then maybe just it was one of those things. So, but anyway, Singletary continues for volume. You continue to use him because if you're, this week it was the 6 catches. So this is a tougher matchup. He had 2 cake matchups and he crushed in those. But Singletary looks fine. The receivers. So look, now here's a floor game for Tank Dell. 5 for 50 at a touchdown, 8 targets. So he continues to get the ball. Now he had 11 or more in his prior 3 games. But again, the target volume is up. They use him on so many different types of routes. And it was interesting because he caught a touchdown in the front of the end zone on like a scramble play. And it was like with all those big bodies, it was like, how did he get to that spot alone? And nobody was there like to kind of even like interfere with him. Again, props to Tank Dell because I said this before, 5'8", 165. His speed is only like a 4.47. For his size, that's slow. At 5'8", 165, you're kind of expecting like a 4.38 or something like that. But yet you put the pads on this guy and he gets it done every week. So right now, I keep moving up my rankings every week because at this point, is he going to have a down game? Yeah, but Jamar Chase had down games and, the stars had down games. So at this point, I mean, top 18 wide receiver because he hasn't proven to be otherwise. And Nico Collins looks back. 7 for $104 and a touchdown on 9 targets. And, he's like the proper alpha. And we saw early in the season, a lot of those in breakers and working on those. And that was back yesterday. And Collins had a little bit of a lull. Defense has made some adjustments. But again, this was a rematch and Collins got going. Collins, he's still going to be, I don't know that he has Dell's ceiling because Dell gets a lot of those downfield passes. And Dell had, it was weird. It was like a long pass he caught. They called offensive interference on him. I thought the defender pushed first. Now I don't care who gets, again, I'm no fan of any particular team, so I'm not invested that way. But it was like another long catch he could have had. But outside of that, it was, and then the tight end, we didn't see much from Dalton Schultz. 1 catch for 2 yards. The yardage 2 of the last 3 weeks has been down a little bit, but that's the tight end position. It's kind of the way it is. They threw him a deep shot. This was the game on the line, 4th down play. They ran him isolated on the outside, and he's not fast at all. And Stroud overthrew him, and it was just a kind of a wasted play. It was a game that get the ball to Collins, get the ball to Dell. I just don't get, but anyway, that's just me. So that said, they passed the test with flying colors. And Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence. So finds a way to get it done, throws it for a lot of yardage, 364 through the air. Houston had been a good pass defense. Only throws for 1 touchdown. He runs for another. So, he definitely cashes for fantasy. It wasn't a smash game, but he's no CJ Stroud, just joking. But Lawrence, he did what it took to win. Travis Etienne, again, the snaps this is going to be a thing. Early in the season, it was 80+% snap share. Now we're looking at about 62, 63. And his workload, he did end up getting 20 carries and 6 targets. So that has been an outlier. But Dearness Johnson had 7 carries and 2 targets. So Bigsby's kind of out of the picture. He had 1 carry, but it's definitely now it's going to be Dearness Johnson. If you're in a deeper league, Dearness Johnson is going to see touches every week. That's going to be the way it's going to be, because last year we saw it. They wanted to spot Bigsby. Their offseason moves showed they wanted to do it, and they took them like 7 weeks, and then they did that. So there's that. Calvin Ridley, we talked last week. It was very cool how they started moving. He always lines up on the outside left, like almost always. And, well, they was just very predictable, very static routes. Teams could bracket without knowing, doing something differently. Well, last week we said they got him in some stacks. They got him on the move. Now, he didn't have anything going in the first half of this game. He was a goose egg. But we saw in the second half, they went back to the same stuff they did last week. And all of a sudden, 5 for 89 and a touchdown. Ridley looks great. And as long as you're going to continue putting him in those situations, again, they slept out the first half. I don't know how you do that, but they went back to it. So to me, at this point, you got to say now Ridley was going to be the player going forward. If he didn't burn you too bad up to this point, you got what you wanted. Decent game from Christian Kirk, 4 for 89. He had a couple downfield passes that clicked. He had a tough cornerback matchup with Tavierre Thomas, but hey, 12.9 PPR points, you'll take that. And Evan Ingram, he's been getting like 6 PPR points. He got you 9.9, 5 for 49 and 8 targets. Touchdowns aren't there this year. The downfield plays, they use him too horizontally. But if you're going to tell me you're going to get about 10 PPR points most weeks out of the tight end without ceiling, I think a lot of us will take that, because we've seen it. You get the tight ends that score 1.2 or something like that, where at least Ingram has a solid floor, and you can kind of live with that. All right, before we get on, if you like the show, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button. Eric's in the house. You traded Puka and Jonathan Taylor. You traded Puka for Jonathan Taylor. Oh, wow, that's a great haul there. And he traded Cup and Flowers for Adams and Lockett. So, oh, wow, that's for down the stretch. That's great. And then you flip Cup. Yeah, that's good. And getting out of the Rams, probably not a bad idea right now. And because even before, the passing yardage wasn't great for Stafford. And now that the pie is getting divvied up a little bit more, yeah, probably a great time to get out. And then Charlene, you put in Josh Allen in the Miami D. Yeah, the Miami D. I drafted and held them. Either I had the Browns or I had the Miami. Those are the 2 defenses I targeted preseason. And big loss of Miami, Jalen Phillips. That's a big one. He's an outstanding pass rusher. They'll be okay, but that's a huge loss for them. But 10-2, Charlene. Nice job. All right, let's continue. Anthony Cervino should be in soon. We'll have him, and we'll continue to go over the festivities of Week 12 Sunday football. And we'll preview the Monday night game. All right, now Eagles and Bills. That was a fun one to watch. It rained fairly hard the entire game. That's weird, right? Sometimes you get rain, it lasts for an hour, maybe a half. The entire game it was raining, and it was not drizzling. It was coming down pretty good. So that was a weird game. But look, 71 points on the scoreboard. And again, the Eagles continue to score all these points. And it's almost like, how are they doing it? Because the offense will look disjointed for series, drive to drive. But yet, I mean, Jalen Hurts throws for just 200 yards. They score 37 points, and he throws for just 200 yards. He runs for 65 and a couple touchdowns. So that's nothing stratospheric. Even Swift, he ran for 80, and one of those is a big run late in the game. So it's like, how are they figuring this out? It's one of these puzzles that you're putting together, and the pieces aren't lining up. But then it's like the picture looks great. And Jalen Hurts for fantasy, again, there's no question. That's the player that you drafted. I mean, you're putting 5 touchdowns up, 3 and 2. Wow. I mean, again, the ceiling has been insane, right? And from the receiving standpoint, so it's been 2 games in a row that well-coached defenses. Last week we had Kansas City, and this week we have Buffalo. And Buffalo doesn't have the talent on defense that Kansas City had, but they have the coaching and the idea with, again, no Dallas Goedert. Now there's a 2 receiver breakdown instead of 3 because you have to worry about Goddard. You have to game plan for him as well. But without him, nobody's worried about Jack Stoll. Nobody's worried about Julio Jones. Nobody's worried about Olamide Zaccheaus, even though he scored a touchdown. Teams will give that up. And so again, A.J. Brown, 5 for 37, 9 targets. He does score a touchdown. So for fantasy, not the games you were expecting, not what you had been getting, but you can't argue with it. It's almost 15 PPR points. So you take it and you hope next week is better. The big recipient continues to be Devontae Smith 2 weeks in a row. I read some lazy analysis somewhere, just basically saying that, it looks like they flipped roles now. Devontae Smith is, no, it's very simple that he's not the number one. Defenses are overselling to slow A.J. Brown down, and Devontae Smith is an excellent receiver. And it's not a big problem for Jalen Hurts to say, okay, well, you want to give him less coverage, I'll just get him the football. And he catches 7 of 9, 106 and a touchdown. Very similar to last week. I think last week he was 99 yards, and he was like a foot short of the touchdown in that 100th yard. This week, about the same numbers. Just goes over and he gets the touchdown. So, again, just they get it done every week. Rashad Penny. I should have decided DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift, he has a floor every week. But there's not really big ceiling games. That 175-yard game was back like in week 2 or week 3. It was way back early in the season. And he doesn't have games like that. This 14 for 80 and 1 catch for 4, if he doesn't find the end zone, you're looking at an RB2 type numbers. But in this year, with everybody not producing, he's like an RB1 because this is a down game for him. And we've seen the down games for the running backs, and it's worse than 14 for 80 and 1 catch for 4. So not finding the end zone always hurts. But again, he has solid work every week. And it's a great thing with the Eagles. Right now, the Eagles are playing the 49ers this week. Massive, massive game because Eagles are up 2 on the 49ers. If the Eagles win, now they still got Detroit in the mix, right? But if the Eagles win with the 49ers, they're up 3 with the tiebreaker. So that's over if they beat them. However, if the 49ers playing in Philly can pull the win off, they're 1 game behind and they have the tiebreaker on Philly. So they just need a tie. So this can be fun. That game is very important for that all-important number 1 seed. Buffalo Bills side of the ball. So I will say, look, I don't want to say, changing to Joe Brady changed everything for the offense. I don't want to say that because it's like the offense was successful. They just turned the ball over a lot. They were moving it. But realistically, now I think what Joe Brady has done a little bit, though, I think he's weaponized James Cook a bit better. Now, Cook has 3 straight games. One of those games, Brady wasn't there. But Anthony Cervino, welcome in.
What's going on? How are you?
Doing well. Excited to talk football with you. We were just talking Buffalo Bills. We talked about how I don't want to say it's all Joe Brady because that's kind of crazy. The turnovers were hurting the Bills. They were moving the ball well. But Josh Allen continues to put up the big fantasy numbers. And now with only 1 turnover, hurt the team. But obviously they look much, much better. But James Cook, they're using him differently. 100 yards in 3 straight games from scrimmage, whether it's receiving, rushing, combo. One of those games was without Brady. But Cook right now, in a year, Anthony, I was just talking about earlier, so many players who are good players are soiling the bed on a weekly basis. First, I'll ask you about that. What's up with these players soiling the bed on a weekly basis? Like good players. There's bad quarterback play. What's all going on here?
The players that jump out to me the most, like the Eckler, the Derrick Henry, I think we really need to take a look at the age and the proverbial running back cliff for some of them and possibly falling off. I hate to say it, but Eckler doesn't look the same. Derrick Henry certainly does not look the same. Yeah, he had a couple of, he had 2 touchdowns and went right around 70-something yards on the ground. Years past, that's 150 and 3.
Yes, against the Panthers at home, 150 and 3.
Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, the fumbles last night, and this wasn't the first time they're putting the ball on the ground with the Chargers.
So that all said, that's been the disappointing part of the season. You'll look at your fantasy roster and you'll see good players. Like even before Taylor went off yesterday, Taylor had been doing very little with his opportunities. So even the younger guys, it's been. You got Cooper, bad quarterback play. He was great, but now the quarterback plays overwhelmed him. Chris Godwin, not getting it done. James Conner, when he gets the ball, he's great, but there is nothing going on for fantasy. He's not getting touchdowns. Kyler Murray stole another one. So it's just been across the board. But I just know a lot of my lineups are littered with players who are still playing at a high level, but they are not doing anything for fantasy.
How much is a correlation between, because a lot of the players who aren't doing much are veterans, and how much is it a correlation of, well, the veterans, they don't practice as much, they don't play or practice a ton in the off season compared to the younger guys, and is that now catching up to the game?
That's interesting. Because usually you think of these athletes, it would take 2 to 3 weeks, maybe a little acclimation period, because that would be like a training camp, right? But I guess we're going to have to play this one out for another season and see if it's sticky from year to year, because the defenses have caught up with the offenses, and the refereeing, the calls are definitely being from the league office. This is from the league office. They're calling these ineligible downfields. They're calling more holding. They're calling more illegal formations. These are crippling drives. Anything there?
I mean, we're seeing a lot more penalties. I feel like you're right, but their penalties, should they be called? And if they're going to be called one way or another, they need to be consistent, because I know certain referee teams or officiating teams are going to call the game differently than other officiating teams.
It's frustrating. So back to the Bills. James Cook, 6 catches yesterday. He has 11 catches in his last 3 games, so it's not he's going to get 6 every week. But I noticed that they're using him in motion a little more, some jet motion. They're getting him out and routes as opposed to just some dump off screens. Not that's all he was running before, but on the ground, not great, 16 for 43, but each week he finds a way now to get things done. What are your thoughts on James Cook going forward?
I was big on James Cook coming into the season, and he was hot to start, hit a couple of, it was a 4 out of a 5 game stretch in the single digits in PPR. Now he's starting to find his way again. And I think James Cook is going to be one of the better running backs in the NFL moving forward. I think this is just a beginning of what we see with James Cook.
Yeah, he's in a great offense for what he wants to do, is speed back, and a quarterback that's clearly going to stress the defense. So it's an optimal spot for him. Now, Stephon Diggs, fine game for fantasy, 6 for 74 and a touchdown, 11 targets. And Gabe Davis has the big game. He gets 105, a little bit more production. But Steph Diggs has not been blowing up for like a month now. What's going on with him?
Possibly defense is catching up to the fact that, hey, like, Stephon Diggs is the only one they really throw to, because Gabe will have his spots, but I think he went through a 3-game stretch where he was only targeted a handful of times. And we have Dalton Kincaid coming on, but the enemy defense knows, hey, let's take out Stephon Diggs, let these other guys beat us.
So Diggs had 5 100-yard games in his first 6 outings. There have been 6 games since. He hasn't cracked over 86 yards in any of those games. He has 2 games with less than 35. It has been a vast difference. Now, last year, we saw the same drop-off, but that had to do with Josh Allen's elbow injury, I thought. But Diggs has been complaining since the end of last season. And is there anything to the idea of his attitude could be a problem? I mean, it's hard to quantify that, but is this a possible problem as well?
I mean, if the attitude's a problem, sure, but are you really still not going to target your best wide receiver because of an attitude? Now, what did they mentioned this on a broadcast? Stephon Diggs was taken out of the game on 3rd downs quite a few times last night. I don't know if you caught that, but they kept mentioning he was not on the field. I don't know what the hell's going on there.
Right, because even if the play wasn't designed for him, well, that's stupid, because the defense has to account for him. How much easier is it for the defense with him off the field? So, yeah, I don't really get what's going on with Diggs, but right now, he's looking more like a high-end wide receiver 2 than he is that high-end wide receiver 1, and that's a problem. The Chiefs, Anthony. So it looks like we're going to like sing their eulogy.
Yes,
because it was midway through the second quarter. They were trailing down by 14 to the Raiders. The offense looked horrible. And then all of a sudden, the 11 targets that go to Justin Watson last week. Oh my gosh, let's throw the ball to Rashee Rice 10 times. Oh, guess what? 107 yards and a touchdown. Justin Watson, oh yeah, really not the guy. Great way to go, Andy. At least you figured it out now. And then Kelsey comes on and plays very inspired football, 6 for 91. So basically it was a 3-man game. Pacheco, of course, gets his about 4 yards per carry, gets a couple red zone scores, but realistically, Mahomes just flirts with 300 yards, gets enough done with Rice and Kelsey. Thoughts on the Chiefs going forward?
This is the Kansas City team I kind of thought we were going to see all year. And to me, this is like the first time they were really faced this type of adversity, and they got out of it. Now I get it's the Raiders, but the Raiders are playing good football right now. Even on offense, Aiden O'Connell is starting to get into rhythm a little bit. So the Raiders are not an easy out, especially when you're down a couple scores early. But I think we're starting to see that Rashee Rice is, and I said this a few weeks ago, that he was going to eventually come out of this bye, and he's still a rookie, and he's going to get more acclimated and more comfortable. Mahomes going to get more comfortable with them. We're going to see Rashee Rice kind of take off, and he blew up yesterday. And once we see this other guy, whoever it is, take off, then that takes pressure off of Kelsey. It takes pressure off the running game because nothing was really working the past few weeks.
I just, again, I know we're fantasy players. We study the game and we know 1/1,000,000th of what the coaches know. But it still just blew me away, the Justin Watson thing, that coming out of the bye, that was our answer, Justin Watson. And of course you lost the game. Of course you got it handed to you by Philly because you went to freaking Justin Watson while Rice was sitting on the sideline. I'm still salty about that one, but all right, we move on, I guess. Steelers, first game with 400 yards offense on the season, Anthony.
First in over what, 50, 58?
It's been a while.
I think that was a stat.
It's been a while. So how do they do it? Well, again, it's the running game leads things, right? Najee Harris, 15 for 99. Warren doesn't have the great game he had. He gets the usual 13 carries, only 49 yards. He lives on the explosive play. You think against Cincy, he would have been able to get them. It was Najee breaking up a couple bigger runs there. Still is a complete timeshare. Najee gets more snaps. Najee usually gets a couple more carries. Najee gets Jaylen Warren gets a couple more targets. But realistically, both of these guys, for the most part, are solid running back twos. Any thoughts on the running backs?
Yeah, you could comfortably use both of these guys in your fantasy lineups in a flex spot or RB2 spot. And I think it's going to flip-flop depending on the game, who's going to be more productive. Like, it was a Najee Harris game yesterday, nearly gets 100 yards, scores the touchdown, 0 targets. And that's the first time all year he gets 0 targets. That's what Jaylen Warren does well. And going into this game, a report came out that, hey, we're going to get Jaylen Warren more work. Najee Harris, to me, is a type of back that doesn't want to concede any more carries.
No, definitely not. Now, Najee Harris, I had pointed out, it is going to be top of my head now. I believe he outscored PPR Warren in like 5 of 6 games. There's only one game he didn't outscore him.
Yeah.
But it's close. It's always close between the two. But Najee's been on the touchdown binge. He scored 4 in his last 6 games, which certainly helps. And like you said, the receptions, he had at least 3 receptions in 3 of 5 games, but not getting a target certainly hurt. But for fantasy, I don't think anybody's complaining with 99 yards and a touchdown on a Najee Harris for sure. Now, this stunned me because Pat Freiermuth had done nothing this year. He had 4, I believe it was 4 games. 3 of them were less than 10 yards, and then he had a 43 and a touchdown, but he really had done nothing. He gets 11 targets. He was their big guy downfield. 120 yards. Deontay Johnson, 4 for 50. Pickens, 3 for 58. Johnson and Pickens get 13 targets to 11 for Freiermuth. Now, I know you could pick on the Bengals with the tight end, but you could really pick on them with anybody you want. Thoughts on that?
The Bengals' second easiest matchup for tight ends, but I didn't see this explosion coming, a career best performance out of Freiermuth. Freiermuth missed a lot of time this year. I think he missed, 5, 6 games?
Mm-hmm.
He was a big part of this offense last season, and I think they're going to have to use him and keep him involved to get this offense where it needs to be. I'm not a Kenny Pickett believer, but I think he's good enough to at least support a couple of fantasy guys. And Freiermuth, he's a player where if you were able to, because a lot of people drop Freiermuth, right? If you don't have an IR spot, you need an extra bench spot. I'm in a couple, like I have a lot of FFPC teams, 3 of which are first place teams. I picked up, I bid a lot on Freiermuth. People dropped him. And I have him as insurance to guys like Goddard, Komet, and Travis Kelce. And it's a tight end premium league. Like, you can use him in a really competitive win now dynasty team. I needed a tight end. I had guys like Hunter Henry. I moved a pick to go get Freiermuth. I just thought, like, oh, this guy's going to come back. I have a feeling he's going to have a big year. And so far, so good with that call. But yeah, I think Freiermuth's going to be involved moving forward. And you get week 16 fantasy semifinals. You get Cincy again.
Ooh, oh, look at that, cha-ching. Charlene points out that Chuba Hubbard and Dearness Johnson had good games. Yeah, Hubbard especially had a good game. Tennessee, good run defense, and he ended up doing well. He doesn't always do that, but he cashed in. And Eric is asking us, with all the buys in week 13, Anthony, can Chuba Hubbard be used against Tampa, or should he get Curtis Samuel off the waiver wire? Now, Curtis Samuel, first of all, I'm trying to remember the match off the top of my head, but I know I have him. Yeah. So,
well, last week he had Dallas.
Last week, I'm trying to think, whoever Curtis Samuel was playing when I was pre-looking at things, I have him like as my bold call of the week, that whoever is playing is the middle of the field. Again, it's too early to look at the schedule. But Chuba Hubbard against Tampa, what are your thoughts? And I'll dig up that game.
Well, Samuel gets Miami.
Yep.
But like Hubbard against Tampa, like Tampa's defense is kind of falling apart. And I get Jonathan Taylor ran down their throat, but Chuba Hubbard's not Jonathan Taylor. I'd probably be more apt to look at a Curtis Samuel, because if you look at the way Miami plays defense, they have really good corners on the outside. And Samuel, so does Dallas. And Samuel was heavily featured in this game against Dallas. And like you just said, Jim, he ate up the middle of the field. I could see a similar type of usage.
And that's Vic Fangio style.
Yeah.
You play the shell, limit the explosives, and you'll give up underneath stuff, and we'll eventually get you. To me, it's a perfect Curtis Samuel setup. Now, that said, Ron Rivera, and now he has Eric Bieniemy, so at least he's got that kind of keeping him in check. But I do think Samuel gets used this game. I would probably be compelled. Now, Chuba has a better floor, because Samuel, they might choose not to throw him the ball. But I think Samuel has a better ceiling than Chuba in this one. And if they play the game right, he would have a floor. But again, you always know the running back's getting the ball. You never know that the ancillary receiver's getting the ball. Anything on that?
Yeah, Chuba's definitely safer. But again, I look at Chuba more in this matchup against Tampa. He needs to score to return value.
Exactly. Quickly, before we get into the Monday night game, we have 4 division leaders in the AFC, all with 3 losses. Now, the Ravens have played one more game, so they have one more win. But basically, it's the Dolphins, the Ravens, the Jaguars, and the Chiefs. Of these division leaders, who's the front runner
to win the AFC?
Yeah, I just for whatever you want front runner to mean, the best team of them all, who right now, because we're already into this. We're 12 weeks into this already. And again, the Dolphins, the Ravens, the Jaguars, the Chiefs, again, 3 losses each. Who's the best unit here?
I don't know if there's a standout best unit, because I feel like there are holes everywhere. I would default to the Chiefs because Mahomes, he's been there and he's battle tested. So I guess my default would be Kansas City. I want to say Miami, but like Miami hasn't really beaten anybody yet. No. And I think when Achane finally gets going, that's going to be a big help. And they have Ramsey back. I think they're the dark horse to where if this Miami team clicks the way I think it could click, they're a Super Bowl team. But again, that's a big if.
Man, I think what we're basically saying here is, and I know it's a little early, the AFC playoffs are going to be fun. They're not going to be what we thought they were. We thought we were going to have some juggernaut teams. We thought we were going to have the Bills, the Bengals, and the Chiefs, the 3 high-profile teams playing at the top of their game. We didn't get that.
Can you imagine if Houston sneaks in with the way Stroud is playing? Because Stroud reminds me of Dak. Back 2016, rookie Dak, and that team like only lost, that they could have made a run.
I talked earlier in the show, Anthony, that this was the first time that Stroud and Bobby Slowick, the OC, they had a rematch against the team. So it wasn't just watching film. It was like, okay, these guys actually shredded us. And look, they only scored 21 points, the Texans did, but I thought they answered the bell very well. What your anything on that?
No, I think what's going to hurt this team is the lack of running the football. If they had any real running game, this would be a more of a dangerous football team. But the fact that they can't run, look what Jacksonville did. They pinned, I think Stroud was a leading rusher. They pinned their ears back. And when the game was on the line, they sacked CJ Stroud because they knew, hey, they're not going to run against us.
And here's the point, I think, that is within what you're saying. You get to the playoffs. You got Vic Fangio with an excellent pass defense. You got the Ravens with one of the best pass defense, and Mike McDonald showing all these crazy looks. And you have the Chiefs with Steve Spagnuolo. These are three outstanding pass defenses. And now if the Texans make it, you're talking a team, like you said, with no legitimate running game against these pass defenses and confusing looks from all three of them. That probably makes it where the Texans, they could squeak one game out, maybe, but they're not squeaking out two, right?
No. But let me tell you something. This offseason, like, the Texans, you have the narrative, the quarterback on a rookie deal. I'm trying to get Eckler or Derrick Henry or Saquon. I'm trying to get one of those three veteran backs who wants a contract, give them a 3-year deal because you're not paying your quarterback anyway, and go try to get a Super Bowl.
Love that. Now, the NFC. So the Eagles obviously just one loss. 49ers look like world beaters right now. Coming out with everybody healthy, the 3-game losing streak long in the rearview mirror. We were saying earlier, they play at Philly. If they beat them, they pull within one game, and then the 49ers have the tiebreaker. If the Eagles win, they pull away. You got the Cowboys, who, again, continue to impress. And we have the Lions. Now, the Lions looked less impressive the last two. They played the Bears. They lost to the Packers. They didn't look good in either of those games. Who's the class of the NFC right now?
It's Philly, right? Like, Philly's, I think they have 3 wins against teams with over 8 wins? That's really hard to do in this league. Now, is some of it listen, like these walk-off wins against Kansas City and Buffalo, eventually the luck's probably going to run out. But right now, I think we're going to know who the cream of the crop is this upcoming week. You got Philly, you got San Francisco.
Man.
San Francisco 49ers fans, they think, if we had a quarterback, we would have won. I don't think so. I think Philly, if there's any answer in the NFL to San Francisco, is probably this Philly team, because Philly can score with them. You don't necessarily have to stop them. You got to score with them. And Philly can score with them.
I love that point. And I was thinking about this last night. But with the addition, Chase Young, Randy Gregory, to throw along with everybody they already had, I think last year's Eagles team, they were definitely better than the 49ers. Start with the Eagles defense. Their cornerbacks are playing at a great level. This year, they're not. They're playing decent, but not very good football.
Right.
Last year, you could run on them. This year, not so much. But now, this year, we see the Eagles. Yes, they're scoring points. It's kind of disjointed, but they're getting it done. But will they be able to do that against the 49ers? That's going to be my question.
You bring up what the 49ers have, what the Eagles don't have. I think they're very similar, because the San Francisco secondary is not very good, and they lost their best player, Huafunga, for the year. So, you should really be able to throw on each other.
So it'll be fun to watch. I can't wait.
It's going to come down to the pass rush, really.
Yes.
Which pass rush is going to cover, be the Band-Aid to the bad secondary.
Oh, and that was the thing I was meaning to weave in. So last year, that Eagles team had 70 sacks.
Yes.
It was an elite pass rush. This year, their pass rush is okay. It's okay. It's nothing earth-shattering.
Yeah.
The 49ers right now, it's legitimately scary now. It wasn't until they added more pieces. Hargrave in the middle, Nick Bosa. Yeah. It is Armstead in the interior. It is such a loaded line. They never have to blitz. They could do so much more, dropping players into coverage on passing downs and knowing they're probably, even against that Eagles offensive line, they're going to get to you. And it's going to be fun. I'll just stop there. Monday Night Football, Anthony. Vikings, 2.5-point favorites against the Bears. Over and unders 44 on this. Now, these teams met in Chicago in week 6. It was 19-13. Kirk Cousins played. No Justin Jefferson in that game. This is the game where Justin Fields got knocked out with a thumb injury. The Bears, refused to pass the ball. Fields got knocked out in the second half. He only threw 10 passes. They were run heavy in that game. Tyson Bagent finished it. This game was 6-6. Right at the end of the half, and Jordan Addison scored a touchdown with 12 seconds left. And basically, that was kind of like, it just was a slog fest. No receiver at all in this game had more than 51 yards. Hockenson at 50. DJ Moore at 51. Nobody goes off. The running game, Deontay Foreman was the only one that did well at 65 yards. It basically, nothing was going on. But here's my question as we go in this game. Let's start with the Bears on offense. That game where Fields didn't throw, obviously it was the one game of the last 5 that DJ Moore didn't get 96 or more yards with Justin Fields. Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator, he's doing a couple things. He has a very confusing blitz looks, or they drop 8. So either drop 8 or they send different variations of blitz. This is the first team that's going to have seen what he's doing with this compromised talent. I don't know if the Bears coaching staff's smart enough to figure it out. But how do you think the Bears look on offense here?
I think the Bears are going to come out firing here with Justin Fields and DJ Moore. DJ Moore with Justin Fields under center, he's just a different player. And again, it was a slower start earlier in the year. But Fields got knocked out. We don't know how the second half of that game would have played out with Justin Fields in it. The interesting thing here is obviously Dobbs on the other side. He's almost like a poor man's version of Justin Fields. I think both of these quarterbacks would be exciting to watch as far as the outcome. This is probably a must-win for the Vikings if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive. But I think I'm going to side with the Chicago Bears.
The Vikings have that great offensive line, both run blocking, pass blocking. They have been very good all year. The Bears are getting a little feistier on defense. They're not great. They're not even very good. But they're not the horrible unit they were earlier in the year. Even just adding Montez Sweat, it's made a difference.
Yeah.
Ngakwe's the number 2 now. He can't be the number 1 at this stage of his career. But it was like a sum add to the entire defense. Yeah. And they're playing with a little more, it comes aggression, and it is paying off. And it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out, because Alexander Madison is a fine NFL running back. But again, you can't really, unless you're a bad run defense, he's not guys going to carry you. And Justin Jefferson, do you think he's playing?
No.
I'd be very stunned.
I think if the Vikings actually believe they could do something, they'd bring Jefferson back. But why rush him back and risk any type of a setback? I mean, look what's going on with Cooper Kupp. It just seems like we're waiting for that season ender to happen right now. So why even put him at risk?
And with the bye, it's 13 extra days off. So if you're close, 13 days probably gets you all the way back. So Charlene's asking Jefferson or Addison. If Jefferson is active, it's got to be Jefferson, right? If he is active, we don't think he's going to play, but at least you have one or the other. But if Jefferson was active, do you have any hesitation in starting him?
A little bit, but I still think you start him.
Yeah.
But my issue is with this whole thing. Jordan Addison was with Jefferson out and Cousins in. Jordan Addison looked like a legitimate number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. And then once Cousins goes down, we're seeing Dobbs, right? Dobbs is nice, but he's not an NFL starter, right? He's at least not a real one. He can't throw to wide receivers. He throws to tight ends. He makes plays with his legs. He does not throw to wide receivers well. So we saw it with Marquise Brown basically doing not much in Arizona, and now like Jordan Addison, and he's kind of just a guy now. So what does that mean? Look at Jamar Chase with Browning. He's kind of just a guy now. So what makes us think that Justin Jefferson is going to be Justin Jefferson?
Right? Jamar Chase gets the 81 yards. There were 2 tipped passes that he was able to corral. And because they were tipped, the defense got off kilter, and he took them both for significant chunks of yardage. Yeah. But those passes were not supposed to get to him, and it worked out. But you're right. It's going to be very problematic for these alpha receivers. Yeah. Now, Joshua Dobbs, what'll be interesting is that now for those, most of you aren't old enough to remember, there was a quarterback named Rick Mirer. He was with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Yes.
He goes to the NFL.
1993.
Yes.
Rookie.
Yes. He had an amazing rookie season with the Seattle Seahawks. In the offseason, talk about the film came out. Oh my gosh, he can only go to his right. He can't do anything to his left. So at that point, defenses overloaded the one side of the ball and they brought all the pressure to push him left. He was like basically out. He was a backup for a while, but he was basically out of the league at that point because he was figured out. Albert, welcome. And I see Uncle Ted's here. Welcome everybody who's here today. So yeah, that was
You know who was drafted number 1 that year?
I'm not going to remember.
Drew Bledsoe.
Drew Bledsoe.
That was the Bledsoe Meyer draft.
In the NFL playoffs, when the Patriots won their first Super Bowl, Drew Bledsoe had gotten hurt, I believe, and then Brady came in, and then Brady got hurt in the AFC Championship game. Bledsoe led them to victory. And again, we didn't know what Tom Brady was at that point, right? But I was like, well, is Drew Bledsoe going to start the Super Bowl? I was hoping he would. I love Drew Bledsoe. Yeah. I was hoping he started the Super Bowl. And I was like, oh, they're going back to Brady. Well, here we go. However many rings later, 7 rings later and whatnot. But yeah, Bill Belichick knew what he was doing. All right. So in this game, are there so you're going to lean with the Bears here. The line is 2.5. Is this a money line? Because it's that low. It's like, are you going to lose by 1 or 2 points? Or is this definitely want that 2.5 points?
I'd probably take the points here with the Bears and just protect myself.
Yeah, because if a team is going to screw up and lessen their margin of victory, it would be the
like
Bears.
I think it's going to be close. I might even buy a 0.5 point to 3.
I like that. Now, it was the first time these teams played. It was 32 points on the board. It was Kirk Cousins at quarterback. Over and under is 44. It's a fairly solid total in this game. What are you thinking on it?
Prime time, the way prime time has been, and right now in FanDuel, by the way, it is 3. So you got the Bears +3 -115. I got 43.5 as a total. I might lean the under.
Yeah, I mean, it's the year of the under, and this.
Or do you do and tease it? This might be a game we tease.
Yes. So if you go with the teaser leg, you tease the Bears through the. Well, you already have the 3. You tease them through the 7, 8.5. So if something goes wrong there. And then it would go up to 50. So yeah, you'd probably get -120 to do the double teaser leg on that. Oh my gosh, I did the teaser on the Jets and Dolphins game, and I had teased up to play the under, and there were just too many defensive scores. Because it was like, oh, beautiful. Darrington Evans fumbles the ball. So therefore they got to bring Mostert back in the game, and he breaks off a long touchdown. Oh man, betting is tough. Betting is tough.
It is.
Yeah. Because I thought that one, my best bet on that I published on RotoWire, though, the best bet on that game was under 14.5 for the Jets team total. They got the early pick 6. They still didn't get it. They were still short 13 points. Anthony, any final words about week 12?
No, I mean, interesting week for sure. Obviously, a little weird seeing a Black Friday game, but I think I like having so much football spread out, especially when we're off.
Exactly.
That's my take on week 12. It was nice to have that extra game.
Those standalone games, and it made the early slate of Sunday games a little easier to follow with only 6 of them instead of like sometimes the 8, sometimes the 9. It was a little less stressful, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. Anthony, tell everybody where they can find you and your work.
My day job here at RotoWire, doing some of the back end stuff here with Jim. I also write some content here and there, and obviously my live stream podcast at Face Off Sports Network at the FF Face Off.
All right, everybody. Anthony's here every Monday. Don't miss the Monday show. We'll be back with a regular slate of shows throughout the week. For Anthony Cervino, I'm Jim Coventry. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your day.